in for you.
To the sky!
Bestowed upon you the power of the sun. A mighty sword! Strike while the iron's hot. For Camelot! For Avalon! Let the heavens rain! I am Ragnarok!
Well, hey there, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, and welcome to the Phase 3 playoffs here for Season 9 of the SPL. My name's Gormizer. We've got Trelly on the desk. We're going to have a very fun weekend. 2 best-of-3s today, 2 best-of-5s, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Of course, 4 teams of the 6 that have qualified that are going to be making it to the SMITE World Championship. Seeding is going to be important. We'll maybe get into that into a little bit. But of course, it's all about qualifying first, right? Double elim bracket. It's got all the stops, all the fun, and of course, you, too, can be having a lot of fun because all of this is powered by our friends over at Prime Gaming. If you're not a Prime Gaming member, then you should be one. If you are, I'm going to tell you some of the stuff that you can use or should be utilizing. If you're not, this is stuff that you should get in on while you still can. And a lot of it comes down to things that you maybe would expect, right? You get a nice free monthly Twitch sub to whatever channel you want to. You can throw it here. Trelly streams sometimes. You can throw it over towards him. You can throw it wherever you want. It's anywhere and everywhere. Stuff like that. You also get access to free games, and that's monthly, by the way. And I just happened to notice it's December 1st. New games literally just started. If you were a Prime member and you started maybe last month, there's a lot of new content. Plus, not just the games, new in-game content for some games out there as well, for anything that is maybe updating live as a service, things like that. Plus the standard, free shipping that you're going to get, 2-day shipping usually for a lot of that. I've got some same-day stuff, which has blown my mind away. And of course, all the videos, the access to the library, all that fun stuff. So thanks to Prime Gaming for sponsoring us here in Season 9 of the SBL. Also, Trelly, I forgot this part. I looked up because the games that were out there, the first Quake is there this month, and Quake is the genre, that is the game. Quake 3 Team Arena really got me into gaming in general, and way long ago. I don't want to age myself.
You don't want to date yourself.
Yeah, but it was one that I think was really fun, doing LAN parties on that, and so seeing that, that made me happy. So I know what I'm doing when I get home.
So a great time to become a primer, then.
It's a great time to become a primer, and you got an inadvertent shout out because
I wasn't planned.
No, but
appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. The thing we're doing here today, though, as mentioned, is qualifying some teams. Well, not today. The thing we're doing this weekend is qualifying some teams to Worlds, and we have to look at how they're going to get there. Of course, if you were watching through Phase 3, we showed this graphic a lot. This is what you can expect, not just today, but over the next month / month and a half, I guess, technically, for the qualifiers roadmap, how we're going to get there. Top 4 from this event go to Worlds. Of course, they get to choose, and we'll talk about the seeding in a second. December 8th through 11th, that's starting next week, next Thursday. We'll be in Europe, covering the SCC, SOC teams. All 6 of the SCC teams playing the top 2 SOC, again, in a very long bracket. It's 4 best-of-3s a day, I think, except for Sunday. Top 2 of those go to the group stage where the Scarabs and the Valkyries currently are waiting, and then whoever gets knocked out this weekend will be waiting for them. The next week, we're going to do the exact same thing, but with North America. We're going to take the top 6 of those SCC teams, top 2 of the SOC teams, throw them into a bracket and make them go through so much, and then take 2 of them, send them to the group stage. January 6th through 8th, that's when we're going to do that group stage, find the next 4 teams that go to Worlds, and then January 13th through 15th, the SMITE World Championship live in Arlington, Texas at the Esports Arena. A lot of fun I'm anticipating over the next month, but definitely there, right? You're certain of it in that moment. Of course, first we have to start qualifying some teams. That brings us to this weekend, looking at this bracket. Now you're going to see, again, double elim today, best of 3s. Everything after today, it's going to be best of 5s. If you make it to seeding match 1, seeding match 2, up in the top and the bottom, that's going to be the teams that qualify, right? So if you're the Leviathans, you're the Dragons, you only have to win 1 to be able to make it there. You have the luxury, I guess, that if you lose tomorrow for some reason, you can still try your best due to the double elim. Same thing goes for all the teams playing today, although they have to win 2 matches to be able to make it there, 1 today, either 1 tomorrow, or potentially there on Saturday as well to try and make their way in and find their way towards Sunday, where the seeding match will be. And Trelly, this is where I'm going to instead of diving into the first matchup immediately, mention what the seeding is, because sometimes it's like, hey, first seed, especially like the first seed curse around Worlds, can be pretty hefty, and we've seen it definitely take down a lot of teams. But here you get to, if you're first seed out of this event, first seed going into the World Championship, from the 4 teams that we're qualifying from the group stage, you can choose whoever you want out of that group to be able to play against. Second seed, you get the other 3. Third seed, you get the other 2. And then 4th seed, you get whoever didn't get picked by the others. And theoretically, it's going to be kind of the standard reverse, but you never know. Maybe you've got a better matchup if, the Dragons are there and the Bolts for some reason make it to the group stage and they're like, well, we know we've got a good matchup there. Things like that. It'll be fun to see how that ends up getting shaken down. But this is going to be the bracket. And again, today is those quarterfinals. Top left, best of 3s, Kings and Bolts playing later. Right now, we're jumping into the Warriors and the Titans. Which also brings us to the next bit of news. Again, if you weren't watching Waiting Room, if you're not on Twitter, not on Reddit, and somehow really disconnected from the internet, first off, good for you.
Yeah.
And also, shout-outs to being here, of all places. I like that. But there is a new jungler here for the Titans. And I think we have Slaney who's going to be doing the interview, and it's just like, it feels, even after moving from the Scarabs to the Titans, can't escape the turmoil of some of the roster changes. But Layers out, Sino in for the event and for presumably the rest of the year.
He looks ready.
He does. You know what? That's a game face if I've ever seen one.
If that's someone that's ready to win, that Sino's got it. And I think, new jungler to the team, but Sino's certainly not
a new jungler.
He's been around.
Yes. And that's the thing, and we kind of mentioned that, and I want your opinion on this, because if we're looking at this team, you kind of have to look at the jungle. And if you look at it over the last couple of weeks, we've even said it on broadcast, but like the punch that we were getting out of the jungle wasn't as heavy as maybe we would have liked from Layers and what we expect from Layers in the past. Sino, admittedly, in the Phase 3 for SCC, the Wardens weren't doing crazy. Again, can't put all of that on him, but it maybe wasn't the best performance as a team overall. Interested to see how this one really works out for the Titans and maybe what their expectations are. But I don't know those things.
Neither do I.
And I'm not a Titan, so I couldn't tell you anything. Luckily, we do have a Titan. In fact, we have Slaney standing by for an interview to tell us just what's going on.
Yeah, it really does feel unfortunate for you, Slaney, that this kind of curse just follows you more than anything. It was with the Scarabs, and you left the Scarabs, and now it's followed you over to the Titans. Talk to me a little bit about, what's going on with the team right now. You got Sino stepping in, 4 Layers. Obviously, if you guys haven't seen, go check the competitive ruling over on the SMITE Pro Twitter channel, or Twitter account, I should say. But talk to me a little bit about bringing Sino over to the team. Maybe what was the decision for Sino of all the players to bring up over?
Sino kind of just fit in really well. Obviously, unfortunately, we didn't really have loads of time to vet all of our options and stuff. But when we tried out Sino, he kind of fit in, and it didn't even feel like a tryout. He almost just slot onto the team. He helped with discussions instantly, and it just felt like he was already a part of the team when he joined. So I think it was a pretty easy decision once we had played with him a bit. So.
Now, from this event, for those unfamiliar who have missed maybe a portion of the death segment already, it is only top 4 of the 6 do qualify in through there, which means for the teams today, they've got to win 2 of the sets to make it there. For the teams tomorrow, they only need to win 1. Kind of talk to me about how is your team and how are you feeling as far as your confidence level in being able to qualify now versus maybe having to qualify all the way in January?
Everyone's always going to feel confident, but I think all of us still feel really confident. We're a team full of really heavy carry players, and everyone's so mechanically talented on this team that I think even though obviously Layers is an insane player, that it shouldn't be too hard as long as Sino just plays his normal game. We have enough people to carry the game, so I think we're still really confident in being able to qualify now or whether it comes January. But I wouldn't expect us to have to qualify in January.
Right now. For this first matchup, you are going up against the Oni Warriors. They've a team who've been kind of back and forth, sometimes hot, sometimes cold. For you going up against the Oni Warriors, maybe what's some of maybe the prep or kind of a player or a style that you have to lock down to try to go against a team like this?
I mean, the Warriors are obviously they have a very unique way in drafting, so I think the way that we prep is going to have to be different compared to a lot of other teams. Obviously, I don't want to go in depth about how we've done that, but I think it should be interesting just because the Warriors are such a different team to draft against, and it's always fun to draft against them. So.
Well, I'm excited to see how you guys do today, especially with your new jungler out there. Slenny, thanks for coming by for the pregame interview. I'll let you get back with the team. We'll throw it back over to the desk.
I love hearing the confidence of the immediate. We don't think we're going to have to. We're not too worried about having to think about January right now. They are still set on this weekend. And more so hearing that Sino slotted in so cleanly, right? And that goes to exactly what you were saying, where it's just you got this experienced jungler, been around for not just a little while, a long time, and a successful career behind Sino, to the point where, I mean, almost every year roster apocalypse comes up, people are talking about junglers, like, oh, who's going to replace blank, blank, or blank if they retire? Sino's name is almost always in that mix. And someone that I'm expecting some good things out of today. I'm curious how the rest of the Titans are going to perform. A lot of fun potentially to be had there, at least from a viewing perspective. The other side, though, it's what Sino there, again, game face, real solid, is going to have to deal with is going to be the Oni Warriors. And, Trelly, this one gets a little more interesting again. A team that admittedly and honestly self-proclaimed has been shakier than they would like. But we know from Phase 1 they can make it to top 3.
Yep.
We know from Phase 3 they can make it to top 4. And I believe, 4th seed coming into this week, 5th seed there for the Titans. This is a team that I think has a lot of promise behind them, a lot of leadership, again, a lot of veteran nature. And it's just about putting it in their own words, not throwing games.
Exactly, and that's a good problem to have, truthfully. If you're not worried about what the other team does and you are the sole reason your team wins or loses, that's how you want to be playing Smite, right? As long as all the pieces are in your control, then that's a good way to be playing. So I think the Oni Warriors should be extremely confident going into a matchup like this, and we saw their face cams. I mean, that was 6 smiles throughout the board. They're looking confident, as they should. But because of the fact that Sino's here, right, and the way that the Tartarus Titans like to play the game before was sort of having layers facilitate Paul, you got to imagine the Oni Warriors have a target on Paul's head, right? Like if Cubo, for example, needs to get to the mid lane and make sure that this mid lane doesn't get enough farm, or play through Dardes respectively and say, hey, let's try and get you ahead so that you can deal with Paul. Someone has to be keeping that mid lane in check, and I think the Oni Warriors have so many different pieces that can do that. They can let Boat just stay over in duo lane and say, hey, rotate in when you're level 20 and just hard carry the game. He's fine with that. Nika, when he rotates into these fights, he can be that commanding force as well. They've got a lot of pieces, and I think it really just depends on how they decide to use them.
Yeah, I think this is a team that has showcased that, again, if they have everything together day of game day, then they're going to be able to lock it down pretty easily. It's actually really interesting. This is one of the matchups I'm more excited for, just because the at least this year, the head-to-head is incredibly close. I think it's 5 Warriors, 3 Titans of the 8 sets that they've played against each other. And again, the Warriors have had some interesting things in playoffs. The first time that they beat the Bolts, and only time that they beat the Bolts, was at a Masters level event. So we'll see if this is going to be as big for them. Again, it's also very akin to just regular season so far, right? This is just a best of 3. You're going against the Titans. Like, you've played these guys 8 times so far this year. Theoretically, you're in a good spot to be able to move forward. But I guess the question comes down, you mentioned Nika, you mentioned Vote, you mentioned a lot of carry potential. I think what we have to look at a lot of this is going to be the jungle. Maybe some of the pick and ban priority for the jungle. So we jump into picks and bans for game number 1. The Phase 3 playoffs, your first chance qualifiers for the World Championship. And immediately, you were talking about Paul having a target on his back. It does not just happen in-game, happens in picks and bans. Not uncommon when you're a Titans player, specifically when you're at the Titans, period, for Paul to immediately eat 2, at least 2, tentatively, but potentially 3 of these bans. No, okay, it's going to be the Guan Yu. With the Set and the Hell banned out by the Warriors. And it is the Ishtar, the Emoja, and the Daji banned out by the Titans. The first pick, I would not have guessed this. First pick of the Phase 3 playoffs, Trelly, and it's Thor.
Yeah, the Hell in the Set made perfect sense. I think the Guan Yu is just a smart ban here. The Thor has actually been real prominent in the rank scene, so I was curious if just full damage Thor would be the call, or they could throw it over to Nika in the solo lane. He's been liking that pick as well. It really just depends on what you want to do with this semi-global presence. But I do like the way that the Oni Warriors have decided to go about this. I think having Paul on a pick like Set is just one of those things that it's very difficult to contain. Of course, he's lost on it, he's won on it, but it's one of those things that if you're dedicating 3-4 bans and picks to try and deal with that pick, maybe just take it away. But that will, of course, leave open the Vulcan, which is another pick that he likes a lot. And you can't be giving Sino Naja, man. They're going to lock that one in immediately. That's going to be some great setup for that Vulcan ultimate.
And I think, you know, it's always fun when we have conversations about Sino, because for a long time, if you were watching the SEC, we talked about ESET jungle. And it was one of those things that it wasn't like oh, ha ha, we're having a joke. Like, no, he was just legitimately playing ESET jungle all of the time if he was able to get it. But the Naja is just so synonymous. I mean, to the point where Sino might be the first player you think of when you think of a good Naja. There's a couple that rival it.
I think about that tweet just every time. It's just after Worlds, just can't give Sino Naja.
Can't give
that was
Sino
it.
Naja. And sometimes that's the rule. We'll see. Did the Warriors forget rule number 1 of playing against Sino? Or do they think that maybe the team synergy is going to give them a little wiggle room? Now, this is an interesting pick as well, because we got the Naja, the Vulcan. We've been seeing a bit of those. Thor, you mentioned in the ranked scene, but also, I think more recently in SBL, he was kind of on the rise anyway. Ares fits that qualifier as well. The last couple of weeks of play in Phase 3, for some, not for some reason, because he does a lot for his team, Ares really jumped up towards some of the priorities.
Yeah, and honestly, it does surprise me a bit, because the reason Ymir was so powerful over in that duo lane was because with the Indreceptor, level 2, level 3, unkillable, right? If you have that extra HP 5, that extra damage, you're just unstoppable. Ares fits that same sort of category where you're getting incredible amounts of lane pressure as long as no one's canceling those flames. And if you get the Indreceptor as well, you're just getting pressure. The issue, however, translates to, what about your late game? You know, is Ares hitting these big chains? Is he hitting these massive no escapes that's going to be setting up for the team? You know, it's still yet to be seen. I think the Ymir wall does bring a lot more, but the Oni Warriors, smart call, because Ymir has a fantastic matchup in Ares, they're going to take that one away. So it looks like Neilma will not have to worry about getting his flames canceled by the freeze, but there are some other supports that can certainly do that as well. Just before that last pick of bans of the Cupid going through there for Stewart, he wasn't too worried about the amount of CC that the Oni Warriors have. Cupid, no CC immune ultimate. He's not going to love those Ares ults.
Definitely some struggles that are going to maybe occur for him. But when it comes down to like Hunter matchups and you know, with the Vulcan, we're pretty certain that the Cupid is going over into the duo lane, going to Stu, which has been a very, very solid combo throughout the year. You have to think that, you know, even though they ate some nerfs on Tuesday, still showing some precedence, good for Cupid, good for Carnanos. But do you think that there's some wiggle room, right? Not for the Titans here, but specifically for the Warriors. With this Carnanos, can they throw it mid and potentially make this a double Hunter comp? Or do you think that it would behoove them to just throw it into the duo lane and keep a standard mage mid for the matchup against Vulcan?
Either one works as far as I'm concerned. They've got good pressure with the CERN and the Ares, but just because of the way the Oni Warriors have been playing recently, I'd prefer to see Dardes on a mage just to try and rival some of that burst that Vulcan comes from, because at the moment, there's nothing that's contesting Earthshaker, right? If you're going for a Gold Tree, if you're going for a Fire Giant, you're hoping that that Thor ult is enough to deter the Titans, because at the moment there's just not enough. So I think some burst here probably would fit the Oni Warriors draft pretty well, especially with how much CC they've got drafted already. They've got the setup for it, right? Anvil of Dawn, that's all you're looking for, right? A good Thor ult should be able to confirm. We did see Dardes pull out the Hera last time, and I was pretty excited about that one. And with the Gilgamesh locked in, that might cement Nika taking that Thor, and that's what I wanted to see. Would it be the Thor over in solo? And the Morgan, despite taking some early clear nerfs, is going to be the 9th pick here for the Oni Warriors.
I was actually going to ask you about that because originally because I was like, oh, well, you know, again, and this is for everybody at home, catch up on bans, the Pele, the Hunbats, and, you know, you got Tyr, you got Ymir, a lot of frontliners or junglers that were isolated there. I go over to the Oni Warriors, and it's like Daji is the #1 ban against them. Makes sense because, well, we've seen what Cubo can do on that pick too regularly. AMC, but granted with the way the nerfs have gone towards him, probably not expecting him too much. #3 on that list is the Morgan, and completely overlooked, completely glanced by. I was not necessarily super surprised that getting locked in. You had mentioned the Gilgamesh, the Bologna there for the Titans, and right now a hover over the most recent god competitively allowed. I'm sure Aggro, if he's watching, giddy if this happens. Maui might end up getting locked in. I guess we can talk about the realm of realistic. Never mind, let's talk about him. Cool, we can go in. What do you like about
show
him?
that 2 days ago I played a rank game with Aurora. He picked Maui, and I was like, you know, what's Maui really bring? You know, his clear's not the best. He's like, oh, he's got good clear. And I'm like, his damage isn't the best. Like, oh, he's got good damage. And then Aurora popped off.
Move speed.
He popped off.
He's got a really cool ult.
If there's anyone that I trusted to pick Maui first in the SPL, it's Aurora. Whether it goes well into Ares is the question, but he's been playing a fair bit of Maui in the ranks.
Now, here's a question for you, though.
Please do.
Do you think, does it make sense that he went down 10th, or do you think he should have been higher prioritized? And do you think that this matchup, like you said, into the Ares, is going to be a little stressful for him?
I do think that Maui getting 10th pick makes a lot of sense to me. I don't think he's going to be prioritized that much until we see exactly how much his cleave autos are going to affect early clear. Because that's the real benefit of an auto attack chain like that, is can you clear the wave early? Is it sort of like a Sylvanas situation where you're just getting pressure? Probably not. It's not that good of clear. But this is a good niche situation where if you're team fighting off of that ultimate, you're going to have some great times, especially if the Oni Warriors aren't ready for it. If it's been, you know, happening a lot in scrims and you're able to like pre-beat that sort of setup, then maybe they don't catch by surprise. But I'm just excited to see Aurora on the map because, again, I got to see it firsthand.
You got to see it firsthand.
He knew what he was doing.
Now, I just because of job, right? Work, stuff like that. We got to talk about the rest of the team comp as much as I want to just zone in and talk about Maui for, the rest of the death segment. How does it fit with a Cupid, right? I mean, you had mentioned like the lane. Cupid's got pretty decent clear, right? But they're up against the Kernos Ares, so it feels like that's going to have some struggles. So like duo lane visions for not just the Maui, but just in general for the Titans. And then team fight visions for the Titans as well, up against what the Warriors have with a lot of good setup.
Yeah, I like the team fight presence, but what you have to worry about the Oni Warriors draft is if you're waiting for this Thorold, if you're waiting for this no escape, you're probably not liking that fight, right? They have so much dynamic team fight presence here for the Oni Warriors, especially forcing Dardez's ult. That's going to be extremely important because if the Morgan is able to facilitate these fights and ult on her own terms, where Dardez can say, hey, I'm going to be a second Thor, or maybe I'm going to be a second Gilgamesh, those sort of things, that starts to add up. If they're able to mitigate that and sort of put the pressure to Dardez, the Morgan becomes so much less effective. And because they've got the Naja, they've got the Cupid, as you said, they have these dynamic team fight ultimates, they have that pressure where they can try and knock Dardez off his game and make sure he can't ult whenever he wants to.
Cause him a lot more issues than maybe needs to deal with. Well, we don't even need to think about it anymore. We don't have to worry about it. We can see how this shakes out. It's game 1 of the Phase 3 playoffs, game 1 of Maui, and it's J-Mac and Mifflin.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gore and Trelly. I'm very excited, not just for the event, but for this game, because we get Maui, who just came into the ability to be able to be played competitively. And we get him in game number 1 of our entire weekend with a slightly new Tartarus Titans team. If you weren't paying attention to the bottom of the screen, if you weren't here for Waiting Room or the earlier death segment, it's a new jungler now for the Tartarus Titans. Sino replacing Layers on this roster for the foreseeable future. And I'm excited to see how he performs because this is a pick that Sino has performed on very well in the past, Mifflin.
Yeah, I feel like the Tartarus Titans had to rein in Sino just a little bit. I mean, you guys talked about it on the Waiting Room for a bit. He's got an eclectic god pool. I think that's probably a byproduct of playing in the lower league, the SEC. Sino wanted to spread his wings a little bit. But spending so much time practicing some of those stranger picks, Naja, still pretty decent, still somewhat in the meta, and one that I think could be a happy middle ground for the Tartarus Titans. But I want to talk about Maui just for a moment before the action starts. I've got a strong take on this pick. I think Maui is Yamoja light. And what do I mean by that? As Aurora eyes the purple buff. I love when pros play it. I think the pros are going to absolutely dominate the games with this pick. The amount of CC that he brings, the displacement, the mobility, the pressure, all very good. But it is such a high level of execution required that I only want to see the pros.
Oh, Neilmon Danger, swing on in, one more hit, and it's Aurora on the Maui. Getting first blood for the Tartarus Titans and the first blood for the new god on his release.
Yeah, I mean, that's not exactly what I was talking about, where Maui's high execution and, like, difficult to play. That was a standard just leap in, get pulled back. But now with the lead, I'm sure Aurora feeling very good about his ability to just run the map.
Sino stuns Cuvo in the midst of the wave. Should be fine, at least for the time being in the duo. And I can kind of agree to your point on him being, you know, a pseudo Umoja Light in that regard, because I've seen a lot of Maui through my casual games. Not too many of them have performed super high.
Don't want to see that.
There's been maybe like that like 5% who have done really good on that god. The others, kind of iffy. So I've been really curious to see how the pros are able to bring this god out, what kind of top level of play the professionals can bring for him. So I'm excited to see what Aurora can do on this pick. Apparently, at least from what Trelly has already seen, Aurora's pretty good on the god, at least in the ranked scene.
I mean, just break down what Maui brings to your team, right? Sure, it's not the most damage you could have from a Guardian, but it's, I believe, 3 pulls, a wall, a Heavenly Sprint hard baked into your kit, and a leap that you can give to your teammate at any given time, right? I mean, it is just infinite utility. The weakness of Maui, though, is the fact that he can't accomplish anything on his own. You catch Maui alone in the jungle, or you're 2v1ing him, Maui has no way to defend himself, doesn't have enough damage to generate threat to make you back off. His CC's still good in those situations, but really is just very dependent on having somebody with damage around him. Otherwise, catch him in the jungle alone, and you've got yourself a free pick.
Yeah, especially, at least if you are the Maui, that ultimate, that landfall, can really create some interesting dynamics within the fight, blocking off paths, blocking off exits and corridors. We'll see what Aurora can do on that pick. So far in the dual lane, it's been working out well. He's got first blood to his name and a slight lead for the Tartarus Titans because of it. But I think whenever it translates over to the team fights, where we'll get our first real taste of what this god is capable of.
And I wonder what sort of pace Aurora's looking to establish on this pick. When I look at a Cupid Maui lane, that's very scary. The pull in, Heart Bomb combo, CC so incredibly strong, especially against some of these immobile gods like Ares. Neil could really struggle in the early portions if he's even hit by the stun from Aurora. I mean, the displacement is all pretty set up from there. So an opportunity for Aurora to just make the decision, hey, I'll hang out in the duo lane, I can control Neomaz rotations, our 2v2 should be a bit better so long as we don't fall behind. If you do fall behind against CERN and Ares, good luck. That damage output is just ridiculous, but considering First Blood already belongs to Aurora, I think that's pretty unlikely. Otherwise, rotations towards mid, I think could go well for Maui. The leap is massive. It's not the fastest, but generally Dartez's response once he hears that sound cue is, all right, I'm going to go into my stealth, I'm going to get my movement speed, I'm going to try and avoid it. But because it is so large, could find himself in situations where not only is the clone getting hit, but Dartez is as well, and it'd be very easy for Aurora to force out a changeling or maybe a beads in those situations. Maui with a lead can be very, very scary. We'll just see how he utilizes it going forward.
And I'd like to see how maybe some of these other picks kind of see the light of day for this one. I mean, Morgan, as we've mentioned, has eaten a nerf as of the update that came out with Maui even prior to this past Tuesday. We saw some nerfs, but still seems that players are straying over towards this god. Cernanos, Cupid have also both eaten nerfs just with this last patch, but seem that they're going to be at least in favor of some of these players out there. And even the Gilgamesh, which I think is the one that I was the most interested on whenever we saw his buff came through. Now gets HP 5 whenever he has his first ability active. Got a cooldown reduction on his drop kick. I believe it's 2 seconds reduced off of that. So I was wondering how long he's going to be before we started seeing Gilgamesh make his way back in.
And it's about this long, right?
Yeah,
Kivo Fred
game
takes
one.
it into game 1. Look, Gilgamesh, I think, is in a very good spot. He establishes immense pressure, has phenomenal displacement. His gank potential is incredibly high. We've seen what Panatom's been able to do on this pick recently as well. Winds of Shamash is never going to be a bad ability. You could drop the damage numbers to like 1. I think the displacement on its own, or even just the ability to completely control a lane, or the size of a lane rather, with that tornado is just so good.
Neil doesn't get anybody. Beats were up for both Sino and Paul, so not a pull for Neil, but 2 very important relics that maybe we can see Cuvo Fred capitalize on instead, knowing that both the jungler and the mid have lost their safety. One good dropkick can set up for a kill. SOT comes over, gets kicked against the wall. Stun onto Neil. He's up in the sky with Sino, but he's going to need a lot of help, and so is Paul on the other side. He gets ran at by Dartez and Nika. Now Neil Ma on the run. Good stun, but an Eagles rally in. SOT will deliver the final deal to take down Neil Ma. It's a 1-for-1 trade at the end of the day.
Man, perfect timing from Nika's ultimate there. Paul's lining up. He says, all right, Windfire Wheels. This is what we drafted for. When he lands, I'm going to shake his earth. I'm going to throw a meatball at him. It's going to be perfect. It's like, oh, wait, I'm stunned. Uh-oh, I'm also dying incredibly fast. Lose out on the beads and his life immediately. And the response is, we got to do something. We can't let the Oni Warriors walk away just having nothing come of it. So at least able to shut down Neil Ma once more. But mid for support, and a support that was already sitting at 0-1, so the bounty isn't nearly as high. I'm thinking the Oni Warriors are pretty happy with how that one pans out.
Still sitting about 1,000 gold down are the Oni Warriors, even with that 1-for-1 trade to try and bounce themselves back. But experience pretty much dead even, regardless of the gold that the Titans have been able to amass for themselves. So, early fight around that Pyromancer. It hasn't even spawned yet, by the way. We're only 6 minutes in. We're fighting over for that Greater Scorpion to the top side. That's been a very hot little place that we've been seeing some of these teams fight for early, Mifflin. It feels like that Greater Scorpion over the course of the season has been showing more and more favoritism for some of these teams.
Yeah, a Greater Scorpion is just the new age Totemaku. Control the Greater Scorpions and you will slowly amass a lead regardless of what's happening on map. That's the Camelot King's MO since the Greater Scorpion has come out, and the rest of the teams in the league have been adapting a bit of that playstyle, or at least that pacing, into their own macro game. So no surprise to me that we see a small skirmish there. The only surprise is that SOT was able to match rotation with Nika.
Another ult from Sino. Paul's got the follow-up this time, but not nearly enough damage. Instead, Paul is getting ran at again by Cuvo and Dardes. 1-for-1 trade, make it 2 as Sino gets pulled. Landfall grabs a couple, but it's not going to be quite enough. Now SOT in the middle of 3, taken down. It's Nika to find the final hit.
Man, the Oni Warriors are playing so well around this initiation from the Tartarus Titans. Sino has continually landed these ultimates, which is generally the bar of entry for Naja, right? Land your ultimates, win the game. That seems to be the case. But Sino's hitting his ultimates. Paul steps up, says, all right, I'm going to do the combo. I'm going to do it again. This time for sure. No way Nika dunks me. Well, it wasn't. Dardes walked up on his own, stuns you out. Then the rotation from the rest of the Warriors shut him down there. I like to see the Tartarus Titans shift up that target priority, though. Neil Ma shouldn't be taking all these abilities. He's already behind. He's playing a support. Go on literally anybody else. Maybe the threat of beads from the Oni Warriors dissuading the Tartarus Titans from actually focusing anyone besides Neil Ma. Dardes, Cuvo, Nika, and Vote all have access to CC immunity. But we've seen now, twice, what happens when you decide to focus Neil Ma. Paul gets ran at. Paul's your late game win condition. Don't let that happen.
But it kind of makes you wonder then, who's going to be the one to pull those beads to give maybe Sino that level of comfort in order to go for somebody other than Neil Ma? Because as you say, and as highlighted, I mean, 4 sets of beads for the Warriors. Neil Ma's the only one without them. They got to get somebody else to pull them. Otherwise, it feels like that's Sino's only viable target there. So if not Sino to drop beads from somebody, just sash in, maybe hope that you get them. Who then at that point, Mifflin?
Aurora, Stu, SOT. I mean, they've all got CC. The unfortunate circumstance is that they've all got just about single target CC, so it won't be the easiest situation. But it really just can't be Sino.
Aurora kicked against the wall. Will be able to swing his way out of there. No harm, no foul to him. Attempted invade at the red buff, but dissuaded as soon as he saw that there were 3 members of the Oni Warriors standing by. As the Trebuchet in mid does get dropped as well. And that lead that the Tartarus Titans had earlier on, that 1K gold that they were up from that first blood, from that extra bounty, has now gone the other way. 500 up for the Oni Warriors instead.
Yeah, but it's the experience that's becoming stifling. You get about a 1-level lead in mid. Solo's got a lead as well. Support's closed up that gap that Aurora established early. Is about a 1.5 level for Aurora for the first 4 or 5 minutes of the game. Since then, Neil Ma, having survived so many of these engagements, just been able to farm up very, very well. And now Paul in trouble again.
Quick beads on the drop kick means that Paul will not be shoved against the wall by Cuvo Fred, or at least thrown back to the clutches of the rest of the team. But again, now that Paul doesn't have those beads, that is an ample target for just about everybody on the Oni Warriors. Any single person walks up could spell doom for the mid laner of the Titans.
Dardes has the option to transform into anybody. A transformation into Naja closes gap on Vulcan very easily, or even Thor from the jungle with these dunks. Paul has to play safe for the next couple of minutes. And it seems to me that Paul may have understood that this is what the pace of the game is going to be. He realizes that he's probably the easiest target for the Oni Warriors, which is why he strays away from that standard stacking build and instead Divine Ruin immediately into the Charon's coin. It's a much faster bit of itemization. You've already got the penetration available, a little bit of anti-heal. So Vulcan not really sacrificing too much of his damage and should be able to deal generous amounts of threat once those Earthshakers start rolling through. But it seems the Tartarus Titans have put a complete breaker on their aggression. Haven't seen them get proactive on the maps since that last couple of fights on the left-hand side, and I tend to agree. If you want to just play around your late game scaling and hope that Paul is just going to do consequential damage in the late game, or Stu can rotate through and start shifting up some of these team fights, or at least spread out the threat from the Oni Warriors, just be another target so that Paul has a little bit of space created. I mean, it's pretty decent of an option for the Tartarus Titans. The Oni Warriors, though, they've already established such a large experience lead that they can go ahead and group up on these neutral objectives. Pyromancer pulled out and start forcing the fights on their own.
No eyes from Paul nearby just yet. Aurora walking over to 3 who have started this Pyromancer up. Not a lot of steal potential from this Maui, maybe from SOT. Landfall pulls 2 back. The Neilma is very low. In fact, the island blocking him off just a little bit on the escape. But the Pyromancer has been leashed thanks to the efforts of Aurora and SOT.
Maybe the biggest win there for the Tartarus Titans is getting beads off of Dardes. Sino finally could say, all right, I've got a great target now. Let me just go ahead and close gap. Let's bring him up into the air. Paul, let's land the Earthshaker. Just survive long enough while I'm up there. And maybe you can find an opening, a singular pick for the Tartarus Titans, and then they can start moving in towards the neutral objectives themselves just by nature of their composition. Vulcan's so good at DPSing Pyro or Gold Fury through the early portions of the match thanks to that turret. So I imagine we see the Tartarus Titans really start hunting Dardes' head. Just get involved in mid. You've got a 124-second window to play with until those beads are back up.
And only 10 seconds left before Pauls are back. So it could be a perfect opportunity. But Sino's kind of fishing around the left side of the map, eyeing his sights towards Vote, who will not push up in towards the lane. Instead, he'll go back towards his own buff and clear that one up. Slight disparity now, or slight difference in the builds for the Hunters going into their third item. There's Devourer's Gauntlet, Shadow Steel for the both, but Vote's going in towards a little bit more crit. Meanwhile, Stewart maybe going for a little bit towards that Light Blade tree instead.
Yeah, maybe just concerned about some tank shred going forward. Blink in from Neilma, chain's no good, ultimate connects.
Sino gonna have to beads to get away from that one. Cubo Fred kicks Sino against the wall, but will have to jump his way out. Perfect timing for Neilma on his ultimate, actually immunes out Sino's at the start of that fight, and maybe is the reason why the Tartarus Titans can't get more aggressive.
Yeah, plus the leap miss from Aurora, so no stun to pull combo for the Maui this time around. Great disengage from Cubo Fred over the wall. Guarantees his own safety. And now all of a sudden, Sino, who had a pretty nice opportunity to look for Dardes, loses out on his bees for the next 2 minutes. Probably will keep him from getting active. I think in just making that play, Neilma that is, by getting aggressive, creates enough space, burns away some resources, and makes sure that Dardes has some time to get his relic back off cooldown.
Oh, well, I'd look back over at Vote and guess he doesn't actually want to go into crit. Has sold the tier 1 Shuriken and now gone towards Lightblade. Interesting move by Vote in that regard. You lose out on some of that extra gold by selling your item. See how it works out for him and SOT, who's now on the run from 3. But Darz and Q are not going to get aggressive there. Instead, it's the Titans going for the first major neutral objective of the game. Gold Fury pulled. Neil and Vote are on the way. Sash into Sino. And a Vulcan ultimate will secure the Gold Fury. Neil Ma crashes back down. Vote is here. Sino, Aegis is gone. Beads are still down. Cubo is in. Wind to Shamash and a drop kick. Should lock down Sino for a kill. Ult from Aurora only pulls in Dardes, who will now de-transform. It's Gold Fury for the Titans and a kill for the Warriors.
Only Warriors, 30 seconds on Sino's respawn. Might be able to rotate all the way back over towards Pyromancer. Doesn't seem to me that that's going to be the case. I love that call from the Tartarus Titans, though, just realizing we've got best confirmation on map. Worst case, one person dies. If it's Sino, I suppose that's all right. And Sino makes the decision that it's going to be him the second he goes in with the Windfire wheels. Buys time, lands into essentially the entirety of the Oni Warriors, but with a neutral objective going to the Titans, I think they could be pretty happy with the outcome of that one. Great play. Does make use of the fact that you haven't really been able to fight on map, so what are you using those cooldowns for anyway? Might as well confirm an objective. And it takes away a POI from the Oni Warriors, who were really fishing for the ability to just go for any bit of aggression on map. Now it's got to be the Pyromancer if the Warriors want to force a fight, but I'm not sure if they do anymore. The Tartarus Titans have closed up a lot of that lead.
The Titans are the one to pull the Pyromancer yet again. Nika finds a stun onto Aurora. Aurora frontlining so his team can work on this Pyro, but Neilmaw goes in for the pull. Doesn't grab anybody but Sino there. Old Earthshaker hits, and so does Sino. This should be a dead Neilmaw on landing with a little bit of extra help from SOT to take him out. Nika in danger. The Thorns will not save his life. The Fire Giant even gets brought into the fight for the Tartarus Titans to take 2. And now starting on the fire of their own.
Dangerous. Vote can just walk in. He's got so much damage available. Cubo Fred as well. This fire is burning though.
Big drop kick from Cubo, but maybe not enough. Drops the winds to try and get out. Stewart uses the beads, but it's Paul to take down Cubo. Dardes turns the fight and finds one of his own, but is now running for his life. Vote is gone. It's only Dardes left alive to fend off against 2. Transform, Eagles rally onto SOT, but he's got to fight against 3. And I'm not sure that Dardes will make it out of this fight alive as the turret slams his health bar away. It's a delayed deicide for the Titans.
Man, the Titans, they baited me. I get mixed up there every single time. I thought they were going onto the Fire Giant and saying coin toss. 5 versus 3, we're going to get the objective. Drop it to 50% in less than 6 seconds, I'd say. But the second the Oni Warriors starts to step forward, Vote walks up with the Bramble Blast, it was clear the call from the Tartarus Titans. Chase out these kills and push our lead further. Reset the Fire Giant. It doesn't matter. There's no way the Oni Warriors can pull it from this position. And it's a delayed deicide for the Tartarus Titans. And the entirety of the lead, those charts just up and down, now down once more. The Tartarus Titans in full control. Seems we've hit a critical tipping point for the Titans team fight. Nika lands the exact same ultimate he's been going for the entirety of this match. Isolates Paul in the back line. Makes sure that he isn't able to get involved in the fight. Difference is, we're 17 minutes in now, and Paul's not going to die immediately in the 1v1, especially if he's got both relics available. Doesn't even need to use both. Maintains that Aegis. Nika has to walk away. Not exactly easy when you've got 4 members of the Tartarus Titans running you down. And from there, the team fight from the Warriors starts to crumble. We need to see Dardes involved in these fights a little bit earlier if you're going to engage like that for the Oni Warriors. Have him being able to follow up on maybe a dunk from Nika or the pull-in from Neilmaw. That's where the damage is going to come from. A transformation of Paul can help out a whole lot in situations like that. But it can no longer just be Nika doing it on his own in that back line. He's going to need some help.
We've seen almost this exact team comp from the Oni Warriors completely shred through. I mean, a dunk from Cubo Fred and Priors whenever he was playing the Thor leads into a massive pull from Neilmaw, and then I think there was a Xing Shen in that game as well that also picked up 3 or 4 people. Massive combo potential from the Warriors to be had, but as far as the relic situation goes against the Titans are going to have most of their stuff back up in the next 30 seconds. Meanwhile, it's going to be pretty even with the Warriors in that regard. Maybe about another extra 10 seconds that it's going to take for them to get their stuff back up. All ultimates available. Fire Giant's still active for both these squads, but I think with everybody still up on the map, no team willing to pull the objective yet.
I don't know. The Tartarus Titans seem to really only concern themselves, at least historically, with one person's relics. If Paul has relics, the Tartarus Titans are generally willing to take engagements, and Paul's got both. I don't think it'll be the Fire Giant as the immediate pull, but with Primal Fury spawning up very shortly and SOT being as tanky as he is already, you can kind of leave him over near on Fire Giant pit, make sure the Oni Warriors don't go for the response play of, oh, they're on gold, let's just go to the opposite side. Maybe we see the Tartarus Titans pull out the Fury, try and take the fight there. If there is a defense attempt from the Oni Warriors and the fight goes the Tartarus Titans' way, I don't imagine they finish off the Fury. They probably just walk over towards the Fire Giant. The Oni Warriors in a very precarious position here. One more clean team fight like we had seen previously from the Titans might just spell doom for the next like 5 to 6 minutes if they're able to net themselves a Fire Giant. But the same could be said of the Warriors. The lead is not so out of control that you're giving heavy odds to the Tartarus Titans in any given skirmish on the map. If the Oni Warriors find themselves in a position to take a clean team fight win, Fire Giant could get burned just as quickly by them. Both teams need to play cautious, but onus does belong to the Titans, who've got the experience and the gold lead.
Yeah, a little over 3,000 for the Tartarus Titans early on. Still no level 20s on the maps. That XP lead still does matter very much so. Stewart will deal with the Trebuchet in left lane, so no damage to his tower coming from that neutral objective. But now the Titans are starting to stray their way over towards the right side of the map just a little bit. as his Pyromancer are set to respawn in less than 30 seconds. It'll be up to the Oni Warriors to decide if they want to try and defend against that objective, or maybe try and go for a Primal Fury of their own. Vision control does belong to the Titans around the pit.
Yeah, I don't think the Oni Warriors can make the decision of, hey, Tartarus Titans are playing around Pyro, let's go for gold. Because Fire Giant is so close to Pyro, and then with the Vision already being so heavily favored to the Tartarus Titans on the right side of the map, they'll generally have a pretty good idea of whether or not the Oni Warriors are even in range to defend. If they even, the Tartarus Titans that is, catch a whiff of a Gold Fury as a counterplay, drop Pyro, go Fire. So I think this is more of a checkmate situation. The Tartarus Titans say, you guys aren't going to go Fire. We will go Primal. Make a decision now.
Nika up in the sky. Where's he gonna land? Right in the middle of two. Sino, though, takes him right back up on his own. SOT to the backline with Vote. Dartes is low. An ultimate from Paul slams into Nika. Dartes, the first casualty of the fight. A pullback on towards Neil Ma, but he cannot run too far. Does get 2 chains up, but the ring bounce is putting everybody else low. The Tartarus Titans find one, and Primal Fury should be immediately after.
Man, the space control from this Tartarus Titans composition is so scary. Step 1 foot out of line, Aurora's going to pull you into the back line. Take 1 step out of line, Paul's got an Earthshaker lined up there immediately. Stewart controlling entire zones of the map with these Fields of Love. The Oni Warriors positioning did not look bad at the start of that fight. The dunk from Nika is good, Neilma's creating space, things are going well, but the backliners of the Oni Warriors essentially had to spend 10 seconds vacated from the team fight. Had to be concerned about these massive AoE ultimates from the Tartarus Titans. Dartes still dead for 4, Titans near the fire.
Neilma just barely blinks out before he gets caught. And once again, vision and control around fire go to the Tartarus Titans, who will start it up to see who they can bait in. Sino takes another to the sky, and up in the sky goes Nika now, but Neilma is dead on landing. A kill for Paul, and maybe more for the Titans, unless the Warriors can back themselves away. Nika able to hammer out, but the Titans are back on the fire.
Fire and Pyromancer pulled at the same time. I'm going cross-eyed trying to figure out what's going down here. Pyromancer, the first to fall. Fire Giant still pulled and burning slowly. Keep your eyes on Fred. He's in a good spot.
Cubo behind the pit. Nika and Vote at the front. A couple of lower health bars. Stewart, though, gets bailed out by Sino. Nika low. Nika gone. Cubo Fred, can he make some waves into the back line? Dartes stunned through.
Nope.
1 Gilgamesh down, and maybe a second one as well. Needs a little help from SOT to take him out. This is a double kill for Stewart, and another deicide for the Titans.
My man Stu stood his ground, used that lifesteal, and walked out of there a man alive. The Tartarus Titans have completely turned the pace of this game, and it's just been around macro play and target selection. We had talked about it earlier. Going on to Neilma doesn't work. Sino said, shut up. You're wrong. It's going to work eventually, and he was right. Paul's damage output, now with Obshard and Soul Reaver done, Windfire Wheels and Earthshaker is going to kill just about anybody on the map, and the Oni Warriors are learning that very, very quickly. And look at all the gold that was still left to be collected. Fire Giant goes down with 6 towers standing for the Oni Warriors. I'm thinking by the time Fire Giant comes back up, we're looking at a no tower standing situation because the golden experience is just out of control.
And Miff, you probably wouldn't believe me if I told you this, but the Titans have had 1 scrim session with this jungler.
Yep.
Again, Sino came onto this team less than 48 hours ago. Had the notice that he was going to be joining the Titans roster for this event. Sure, it doesn't have the most glamorous of slash lines, 0-2 and 11, but those 11 assists to set up for Paul, who's 5-2, for Stewart, who's sitting at 3-1. I think Slaney said it best in the pregame interview. Feels like Sino slotted onto this team perfectly.
I mean, and I don't want to poke a guy while he's down, but look at Sino's individual performance in the player damage charts as well. We're used to seeing layers on Guan Yu, you know, putting up some healing to be sure, facilitating in that regard, but generally around the supports and damage output. Sino's getting active. He's matching the output of a Vulcan, and that's not just Joe Schmo from the block playing Vulcan. That's Paul from PC. That guy is a dominant mid laner that playing a pick that just finds incidental damage. My man's putting damage output on accident. He drops a turret on the map, and it's going to give him like 600 while someone tries to clear it out. So the performance from Sino, not only on such short notice, but also having to step up against a team in the league that has been playing very well as of recent in the Oni Warriors, just impressive top to bottom. And this is something I'd expected from Sino. We knew he's very capable of playing at the top level of play, especially come this time of year with Worlds so close by. This guy's a true competitor, to be sure. I mean, I know you guys talked about it during the waiting room. He's got an eclectic god pool. I think he was having fun in the SEC. Getting to the SBL, it's all business.
Really where he's got a bunker down. And so do now the Oni Warriors, who are having their Phoenix on the left side sieged by the Tartarus Titans. 13,000 gold disparity between them, and all the momentum to the Tartarus Titans. Neil finds 2 chains, but doesn't get too much follow-up beyond there. Phoenix eats a little bit of poke, but the Titans will back away and wait for the next minion wave.
And the Titans have got so much sustain, not just from Fire Giant, but Stu and Sino with self-sustain, even SOT with the Death Embrace, can just keep walking in, resustaining, walking out, and poking this Phoenix slowly.
SOT eats a hefty amount of poke himself, half HP on the Bologna. New minion wave in, new chance to siege the Phoenix. Aurora gets the beads away from Vote, but that cost him his ultimate to do so. And maybe has lost some of the initiation for the Tartarus Titans. Once again, with the wave gone, the Titans have got to wait around for their next opportunity.
No beads on Vote, and Sino has got pretty good odds at landing these ultimates. Not sure that he's missed one just yet. Vote gonna have to play very defensively here. 40 seconds left on this Fire Giant siege, and SOT fully resustained.
Kicked against the Phoenix. Nika, though, barely gets up to the sky. The Heart Bomb, not enough damage. He's got to go out. Neilma taken to the sky by Sino, slams down.
Bye.
And the damage from Paul will remove him from the map. But that's only one of the Warriors killed off in that fight. The Titans will take the Phoenix and move towards mid.
Still 20 seconds on this Fire Giant, so the Oni Warriors need to play carefully on this initiation. Paul caught out on his rotation into the jungle, but with 3 members of the Titans right behind him, no way that Nika wants to step up there. Tier 2 in mid goes the way of the left side Phoenix. Eviscerated, crumbles onto the map, and the Tartarus Titans make out like bandits in the night. The Oni Warriors just were not quite able to put up the defense that we need to see. It might be due to the fact that they've got a non-standard mage. The Morgan generally needs to play as an assassin in the base stance. Really struggles in these situations where he's got to keep these minion waves out or poke that back line. Paul essentially goes untouched in the entire engagement. Even when you are finding poke, we talked about it earlier, the sustain for the Tartarus Titans, just a bit too much to deal with. Stu putting out a whole lot of healing. SOT, well, I mean, what was it? Down to like 40% at the offset of that left side Phoenix Siege was resustained by the time the minion wave had gotten there. The Oni Warriors, they're in a very, very difficult position from here. I don't like their odds in a base defense. I think it's got to come down to stepping up to the Fire Giant or catching the Tartarus Titans in the jungle. So, some wild just plays. Go for a Mouse Esports. Walk all the way around the map. But as far as I'm concerned, if you're grouped up in your own base, I mean, that belongs to the Tartarus Titans as is.
For the Oni Warriors, though, as this new Fire Giant spawns in, they don't have Vote to try and go for this defense around the Fire Giant just yet. But will clear out one wave and make his way over. But that now puts a timer on the Oni Warriors. The Titans have control of that timer, and they are quickly dialing it in. Fire Giant pulled away. Neilma picked up by Sino. On landing, though, not a lot of follow-up just yet. Used his ultimate to try and pull 2, but it's only to his own death. Dart has gone, but he manages to pick up an extra kill of his own during the fight. 2-for-1 trade. Stewart gone, and the Titans are upset about that as they will chase out Vote.
Yeah, Vote's going to fall here eventually. Keyword eventually. Dash should be coming up very shortly. Should be able to get a little bit more space here. SOT no access to the ultimate means that he shouldn't be able to close gap. Dash to avoid the stun from Sino, but simply prolonging the inevitable here. He's bought a lot more time than you should expect, though. Vote drags him all the way away from the Fire Giant. Neilma already 10 seconds back on respawn. I think the Tartarus Titans probably not too upset, considering Vote's going to have to spend 50 seconds in that grayscale, but maybe just going to Fire Giant would have been better. Maybe the concern for the Tartarus Titans is, well, we kind of want Stu to have it. He's our best way to break the base, so instead, going to wait a couple of seconds until he's respawned.
Pyro will be dropped instead for the time. Now we've had enhanced Fire Giant as we cross over the 30-minute threshold. And it's wild to see that Nika, of all players, is still one of the ones who hasn't hit that 20. He hasn't been able to get a whole lot of farm in the last 10 or so minutes of gameplay. It's been mostly fighting by the Titans, who will start up the Fire Giant, just letting SOT and Paul deal with that one for now. But with Vote still off the map for another 8 seconds, this Fire Giant should go to the Tartarus Titans with 0 contests from the Warriors.
Fire Giant enhanced this time at that. Left side Phoenix spawning in just under a minute. Make that under 30 seconds now for the Oni Warriors. So you at least only have to deal with, like, what, 1, maybe 2 more enhanced minion waves on that side of the map. The Tartarus Titans, if they play quick, though, could take that bird off very, very quickly. The Oni Warriors, I think, just can't allow the Tartarus Titans into Phoenix range. The fight's got to happen very quickly. If the Oni Warriors are going to survive this siege, it's going to be off the back of a massive Winston Shamash or the initiation from Nika. If Nika goes in with the ultimate and we see nothing, the Oni Warriors are going to come up empty. If Cuvo Fred isn't getting massive value from his initiation, the Oni Warriors come up empty. The Tartarus Titans, I think, have much simpler execution going forward from here. It's, all right, let's wait out some of these cooldowns. They're down. Let's take the fight. And they've got the sustain to execute on it very, very well. Oni Warriors, I'm thinking this is a miracle situation for them.
Likely will lose out on the left bird as Sino and SOT walk in to take that with the fire wave. Now over towards mid. It's 2 to the side, 3 coming from up the lane. The Oni Warriors have got to put on a hell of a defense to try and deal with the Tartarus Titans here, but their numbers are being spread thin. SOT keeps Nika out of the fight. Sino keeps Neilma out of the fight, and Paul is ready with Earthshaker on landing, but doesn't fire it off just yet.
Really?
Instead, it's Nika to the sky, dunks back in, but immediately hammers his way on out. The Tartarus Titans and Vote now losing out on his beads. Eagles rally by SOT, and a dead Cernanos. The Tartarus Titans now with the 5v4. Can they find another pick? Beads away from Dardas. Earthshaker only clips Cuvo Fred, but Neil Ma is left to dry all on his own. Cuvo Fred dives in, but drop kick misses. Nika gone. Cuvo Fred taken away back to the fountain. And the Tartarus Titans, if they turn their attention to the Titan, they can grab game number 1, but not with at least getting 7 in a row for Paul, keeping Dardas locked down to the fountain. And the Titans will take game number 1 from the Warriors.
A dominant game 1 at that. Starts with first blood and duo. Peter's out for a bit, but afterwards, the Tartarus Titans just controlling every single engagement in neutral territory. If it's at a Gold Fury, if it's at a Fire Giant, the Tartarus Titans are winning that fight every single time. And I think a lot of it has to do with the guy on your screen, or maybe not on your screen right now, Sino. The initiations from this Naja, the ultimates, the Windfire Wheels, he don't miss. He didn't miss. I didn't see a defensive usage of the ultimate, really, maybe 1 throughout that game. But as far as whiffs are concerned, didn't happen. I'm not even sure that he had used it into beads all that often either. And when I think of other premier Najas in the league, like Sanford Soccer comes to mind.
Yeah.
Generally a bit of a slow start there. He misses them early, hits them all late. Sino just did it from minute 1 to minute done.
It's a bit of a struggle for him to get some of the picks that they needed early on, but translates well to the late game. The Tartarus Titans, with their new jungler, come out on top in game number 1. We'll see if they can keep that momentum in game number 2 right after this.
Inside in my bed all day long, listening to sad songs and feeling so low, thinking about you and where we went wrong. 'Cause I wanna know why you let me go. Thought I was more than a body to hold, baby. I wanted you, wanted us to be something. I was so sure, I let my guard down for you. Baby, why'd you have to love me like that? I gave you my heart, you tore it apart. even when it don't feel right. I still wanna party with her, even when it don't feel right. You know I'ma party with her, with her, with her. She be calling on a Monday, wanna meet on Tuesday, asking me to fix me up real nice. She can wait until the weekend, she wants off the deep end, telling me to bring the stuff I like. I don't wanna let her down, so I'm telling her yes. Though I'm kinda down from the pain in my chest, but I'm putting that aside now. I'ma feel alright now, happy from the stuff I know she likes. I've been trying my luck every day of the week, yeah. With my baby, what's up? Ay, always down every week, yeah. Know I love her too much, but I just can't get enough. She's slipping through the cracks, come up blood. She know what's up, can't get enough, yeah. Even when it don't feel right, I still wanna party with her. Oh yeah, even when it don't feel right. Hey, you know I'ma party with her, with her, with her. We been chillin' off the Wednesday, slept until it's Thursday. She don't wanna leave me, not just yet. Told me all about last Friday when she went all crazy. Didn't go to bed till Saturday. I don't wanna go without, so I asked her to stay. Though she broke my heart in a million ways, but I'm putting that aside now. I'ma feel alright now, happy just as long as she's with me. I've been trying my luck every day of the week, yeah. With my baby, what's up? Always down every week, yeah. No, I love her too much, but I just can't get enough. She's slipping through the cracks, come up love. She know what's up, yeah. Can't get enough, yeah. Even when it don't feel right. Hey, I still wanna party with her, even when it don't feel right. Yeah, you know I'ma party with her, with her, with her. Yeah, even when it don't feel right. I still wanna party with her. Oh yeah.
Well, the Titans strike first this weekend. Not just in First Blood, but in game number 1. And, well, it's just like you said, Trelly. You can't give Sino na ja. Of course, for those of you who are out there, you might be thinking, well, trying to figure out maybe this weekend. Seems a little late in the season, but if you were looking for a team to maybe try and rep and you were just waiting for those teams to qualify for Worlds, now's the best time to do it. And, of course, if you want to be able to support them, there's a great way to do it. Not just visually, well, I guess not just monetarily, but also visually. That's the right way to say that one. And that's to go to shop.smiteproleague.com to pick up one of your favorite jerseys. Of course, they're all there for the 8 teams. You can also go to shop.hi-rezstudios.com/SPL, or you can just go to the website. It's going to be on there as well, embedded. You can just find the link. All of this brought to you, of course, by our friends over at Skulls, who have made some fantastic, fantastic jerseys, as well as t-shirts that are over there on the site. In fact, I think there's a 20% discount on t-shirts right now. So if you want to be able to go over there, look at the jerseys, maybe buy your favorite team's shirt, jerseys, whatever it is, then you want to make sure you go to shop.hi-rezstudios.com/SPL or shop.smiteproleague.com to find those. Look good doing it, just as good, or maybe almost as good. You got to give them some credit, as the Titans looked in game number 1. And Trelly, you know, we were looking at it. We were talking about First Blood. We were talking about what Maui could bring to the table.
Yeah.
And then slowly that conversation started to shift, where it was like, you know what, Maui still looked really good. But then you're talking macro play, map play from the Titans just being a little stronger. And admittedly, the Naja just playing setup machine left and right.
Yeah, I'm not going to call a full draft diff because I think there were some stops that the Oni
Oh, for sure.
Warriors maybe could have went for to change the way that game went. But Sino did exactly what you would expect from a Naja, right? You've got a Vulcan, you've got a Naja, consistently set up with that Windfire wheels. Whenever the ultimate was coming through, you knew the follow-up was going to be there. And also, when you're picking a pick like Ares, you're hoping to come out the gate swinging. And this time, it was the Maui that was swinging, and that stun early on, and the pullback was able to make sure that Neilma was never tanky. If you're falling for first blood like that and you lose duo lane pressure, it is so difficult to stay at the forefront of these fights, and more often than not, what we were seeing was Neilma walk up, try and frontline, immediately caught by a Sunder, a Windfire wheels, and then the ultimate comes through.
You can see, and it's so interesting when you give the credit for what this team is, right? Sot, Stu kind of joining in very recently. Paul and Aurora having hung around for a while. Sino quite literally joining yesterday.
Yep.
It is a very, very dynamic session. But Slaney said it in the interview. J-Mac mentioned it there in the cast, which is it felt like Sino just slotted in really well to this team. We got to see a lot of that synergy, I think, there. 1 and 2, maybe if you just look at the KD, nothing too crazy, 0.5. 19 assists.
Yep.
Absolutely wild, outperforming, just barely, but outperforming Aurora in the assists column. Of course, Aurora on the Maui, giving us a very good first look. I think what you had said to me afterward, and now I'm going to reveal to the world, was that he went like 4-0 in the game that you played, but that it was like, and based on that, when your support's 4-0, it's a surrender on the other side. He played that incredibly well. Maybe not a lot of damage, but we're not looking at Maui for the damage. It's all that setup that he brought. And when you have that plus the Naja, and then you get Stu and Paul playing the way they did, I mean, it felt like the stars aligned. Like you said, it wasn't just an easy walk through the park. The Warriors fought back in several instances. But, I mean, even like when they finished the Fire Giant, Titans were up 10K. Like after, I guess they got 2 towers, and they were up over 10K. And it's just like, oh, like you guys had a lead going into this. They played game 1 incredibly well.
And I think this is exactly what the Tartarus Titans needed, because whenever I've been on the desk for Titan sets, the conversation has been, how are you going to facilitate your team in the jungle? Layers unfortunately hasn't been able to do it as of recent, but Sino played with some confidence. Naja is not a pick you go to if you're not feeling hot. You know what I mean? Like, Sino plays a ton of Naja, but my point is, sashing in, being the initiator for your team, saying, I'm going in with this ult. If you don't follow up, I'm dying. And the Titans were always there. I mean, the fully charged Earthbreaker was always there, or the dash in from Stu, the CC continuation. So I'm thinking, try and get Sino off his rhythm. Maybe we see a Naja ban.
To the point where we had even said maybe it's the first ban. Like the Warriors come in, you got to think about some of these fall bans. We'll see in Picks and Bans game number 2. Warriors once again in the first pick spot. Set. So I guess I was off. I said first ban.
Set hell Naja.
But it could be,
be
I was going to say, could still be in the top 3. Naja's right there.
It is.
And you have money bets on Hell. Maybe we'll see that one as well. Umoja Daji on the other side. Again, Daji, one of the most banned gods against the Warriors because of Kivo's performance regularly on that god. It's going to be the Ishar as well. So I think the exact same 3 bans, if I remember correctly, for the Titans. With just the shimmy shake for the Naja over there for the Warriors instead of the Guan Yu. It's a Thor first pick. Last time this went over to Nika. And honestly, Thor, like as far as things go, always a very fun, iconic god. Maybe in that last game didn't necessarily like have a lot of bad things as much as it was, I think, that the Warriors, like all the moments I can think where, oh, that didn't work out well for Thor, it wasn't working out well for the Warriors anyway, so I don't think it was the Thor's fault.
Right, but I think already the Oni Warriors have completely changed the game plan here for the Titans. There's not many junglers that do what Naja did that game, so now Sino's going to have to go with a completely different playstyle. Whether he plays the same way in which that is setting up for the carries, that's fine, but you can't just take someone out of the fight before the game starts, get a kill, and then win the fight with sheer numbers. That's not going to happen anymore. So Oni Warriors definitely make the exact call they had to change up the flow. Doesn't mean you can't pick the Vulcan first. The Tartarus Titans have no problem doing that. Remember last time it was the Ares, I think, as an answer to the Cupid and the Vulcan. Actually, the Cupid got picked into the Ares, but when you see the Maui or the Maui is available, are you really going to go back to the Ares? You got to think Neil is thinking twice about that one.
Yeah, right? He touched the hot oven, got burned, and he's not going back for that one. The Maui looked so good. The Vulcan as well. And when you're talking about setup, and you had mentioned it, like not a lot of junglers do what Naja does. This puts you in a position where got a little bit of time to figure out what Sino's going to be going towards. You get really good setup from the Maui. I think Mifflin had highlighted his kit wonderfully, where it's just like, again, don't even ignore the damage numbers. All the setup and utility that he brings to his team is just so fun. Plus his ult looks really, really
Oh, it really
cool.
does look cool.
And then you get the Vulcan as well, which does a ton of damage, as we saw Paul facilitate last game.
Yeah.
And then it brings us back to this conversation for the Warriors. A lot of the Morgan, I think that has to be discussed with this team, even though it wasn't maybe successful last time around. Again, there was a lot going wrong around it, so I don't know that you can point your finger and say that that in and of itself was an issue. And something that we know Dardes really likes, but are there enough, I guess, transformations available now that you're thinking, yes, let's lock it in? Or do you think that that's something that you can just kick towards the bottom too?
Yeah, I definitely don't think the Titans are worried about the Morgan. It was one of the better picks that the Oni Warriors had that time around, but still, Dardes was dealt with. So I don't imagine that they're going to play around it. They probably just want to make sure they get, I mean, when I think of Sino, you know, the Nemesis or the Osiris, those sort of picks come to mind, but it looks like the Warriors are just going to grab that Rama. Remember, usually that goes over to vote, but we've seen it around. You know, we've seen plenty of times where it's just, you know, this Rama switches up. So we can see if it's going over to Dardes or over to vote in that situation. But the Fafnir, that's going to be the switch up entirely. You don't want to be first-blooded off the Maui stun on the Ares on this immobile character. Fafnir definitely going to have a little bit of extra presence in that lane.
So I was immediately locked in. I was like, wait, Ymir, I know that Neil likes that. It's one of the most picked gods that he had throughout Phase 3. The Cupid, we saw do incredibly well, but that was for Stu last game. Kernanos as well, who was pretty highly prioritized. Both getting ignored, or all three getting ignored. The Rom, though, as you mentioned it, at least throughout Phase 3, they played it in 6 games. They won with him in 5. So you have to imagine Vote feels pretty solid on this pick. The Fafnir as well, something that Neil played pretty often, 5 times. Won all 5 of his games, so 100% win rate throughout Phase 3 for the Warriors on that god. Now the Titans are going to pick up the Bologna one more time. And Bologna, I mean, look, when you're up against a guy like Rom, a silence goes a long way.
Yeah, definitely does. Gotta be the Cupid ban here from the Oni Warriors, I would think. It's just
Current Cupid.
Yeah, too much presence against a Thor, a Rama, and a Fafnir. They're going to let it open. Wow, so it looks like they think, or they believe they've got the answers for the Cupid in that dual lane, especially with the Maui. We saw how much setup was there for that character, and it looks like they said, hey, we're calling your bluff. Sino probably going to go to the Erlong. We don't want to deal with that. We're going to take away that Cupid, which still does leave open that Nemesis I was talking about, as well as the Osiris. 2 picks that Sino has liked a lot in the SEC. Completely different teams, though. So maybe the God switch-ups are just ridiculous. Of course, used to playing with Vulcans, you know, like we know that Moswell does love the Vulcan, but just going for one single character to try and facilitate, a little bit different there. But the Oni Warriors are going to grab Lancelot. I think a pick that has been rising back up as of recent. We had the meta of Lancelot, then he sort of fell off, and now, you know, Captain Twig was the only one playing him for a bit, but I think a lot of these other teams, I think a lot of these other teams are starting to realize how much damage Lancelot can bring, as well as the chase down potential.
Maybe going to shake things up. I did mention, since I mentioned the 5 for 5 on Fafnir games for the Warriors, have to mention, including that last game, 5 for 5 for the Titans on Cupid. So somebody's losing 100% win rate for one of these teams. We'll have to figure out. I guess for the Warriors' sake, they want it to be the Cupid. We'll see if they can manage that. You mentioned the lanes. Discordia locked in. And, you know, we talked a little bit about the Hera, especially some recent changes to her that I think buffed her over, 2 patches ago, technically. And now you've got this Discordia coming in, something that isn't maybe the immediate go-to, or at least not where my mind immediately goes to in the Mage tab at the top of the list, but something that Dardes has really liked. And I'll stand by this, but one really good Strife at any point in the game can turn anything around.
Yeah, definitely. And I think trying to play through that Discordia passive as well could be the option. Whether it's Nika or whether it's Cuvo, one of them are probably going to get that extra damage buff from the Discordia and then hopefully run the early game here for the Oni Warriors. But the Titans are really thinking about what they're going to give over. They went the jungle, man. All right, so no, I'm not going to say it.
Okay, so here's where that reaction comes from.
Yeah.
We've seen Sino's jungle.
Many
We've seen
times.
the chalk in the jungle a lot in Phase 3. And so I'm going to diplomatically mentioned the fact that the Wardens were around 4th. They were towards the bottom of the pack in the SEC. Maybe that has something to do with the chalk jungle. Maybe it doesn't. But Trelly, it is not anything I expected coming into Phase 3 play. Then again, I also didn't expect Sino to be playing, so I wasn't really prepared for that one.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the chalk versus the Lancelot?
Okay, so look, from the outside looking
Or do you
in,
prefer like Bologna? Like, do you prefer anybody else in the jungle over the chalk?
No, it's definitely the jungle. But from the outside looking in, the Tartarus Titans got 4 of their 5 last picks, and they've got like 90% the same draft, and they're just gonna run it back. But that's not how it works. Naja was the sole facilitator for their team fight. Naja was the whole reason they started a fight 5v4, right? So changing in the jungle, that your whole game plan has to switch up. It's still the same sort of style of Sino's gonna probably blink in, hit a massive storm call, and hope the follow-up's there. But you don't get that same amount of confirmation onto the Earthshaker. Paul isn't gonna have free ultimates throughout the rest of this game. So I think completely different change-up. And now the Oni Warriors, they're gonna have that overwhelming early game pressure. They've got the Lancelot, the Thor, and that Discordia passive. And Chalk from behind, it doesn't pack the same punch. Chalk from ahead, he's crazy. Yeah, he can run a game. But from mid to behind, it really starts to fall off.
I know we've had this conversation in the past, but I feel like I have to open this can now. I see the Thor and I see the Lancelot. We've seen Lancelot in the jungle more often than honestly. We've seen way more Thor in the solo lane lately anyway. Nika just played the Thor. Do you think that's how that's getting split up, or is there any merit to swapping those two?
I think Nika looked really solid on the Thor. The Rune Forged Thor in solo lane with Discordia passive is going to be able to dominate that lane. I imagine they're just throwing it back to Nika. There is a switch up potential, but the Lancelot in solo for me doesn't have the same amount of presence. You're going to Thor in solo because he can easily just hammer over the Fire Giant Pit, ult to mid if need be. That Anvil of Dawn brings so much pressure around those objectives, so I think Nika's probably taking that Thor back.
I'm excited to see what that can provide for us, because like you said early on, I mean, up against a Bologna, it's going to be interesting. We got a Chalk in the jungle. I don't know what to say about this one. The Titans are looking to try and move themselves ahead. The Warriors are looking to fight back. We'll find out if they can do it with J-Mac and Mifflin.
Chalk jungle for the Tartarus Titans and Sino, one of his eclectic picks from the SCC. We'll see if it can work out for him and the Titans to maybe take Game 2 and this first set of the Phase 3 playoffs, or the Oni Warriors be able to bounce themselves back up, take us to Game number 3. It's all going to come down to the play on field here as we jump in towards Game number 2. It's J-Mac, Mifflin, and Doug back to help bring you this second game, and it will be Cubo on the Lancelot jungle. Doesn't seem that there was any question, at least in Trelly's mind, that would be where this pick would be going through. But I kind of want to maybe go back a little bit more onto this conversation about the Chalk after this fight through. Nika should be fine, or Neilma, I should say, should be fine there.
Yeah, Nika too.
Nika is also doing fine, on the opposite side of the map where nothing is going on. But let's talk a little bit about this Chalk jungle myth, because it's a pick we don't see often, really anymore, aside from SCC and aside from Sino. How do you kind of feel about the Chalk into the composition the Warriors have drafted, and maybe his carry potential in this game?
His carry potential? I mean, I'm never putting my eggs in the Chalk's going to carry me basket, right? I mean, does decent damage, great disruption in late game team fights, like has a lot of potential to dominate the map. I was worried about Aurora there. Thought maybe he had missed that leap. Should be able to make it out alive. I do not believe in Chalk jungle, but I do believe in Sino, and I think there needs to be a clear delineation there. If Sino wins this and he looks good on the pick, I don't think it has anything, not even a little bit to do with the actual god itself. I'm thinking that's just Sino diff.
All right, so this game, if won by Titans, is just for Sino, not Chalk jungle for Sino.
Yeah, I'm talking to all the ranked heads in the chat. Please don't. Don't play Chalk.
I'm also talking for some of the casuals out there. Please don't bring this over into the game. There's a reason why the top level of players are playing this pick. Maybe if that hit from Paul would have connected, could have seen a potential first blood in the mid lane. But for now, the Tartarus Titans and the Warriors will back away with the Warriors under their tier 1 tower.
Yeah, I mean, the Titans are going to have a lot of pressure here. Lancelot generally needs to take over to level 3 before he's really effective in a fight, wants access to his mount. Sino, on the other hand, has got the entirety of the damage in his kit, barring the ultimate, so should be able to get involved just about whenever he wants. Nice play from the Oni Warriors on the opposite side, able to get Scepter for themselves. I am curious about the pacing of this game, right? When I look at Lancelot, that's a pick that I really think can dominate the early. I think the same of the Chalk. So I think it's going to come down to which one of these two junglers hits pay dirt on a gank first. execution on ganks just got to be easier for Lancelot, though. He's got much more standard CC, the root when he's on mount, or even the knockback from the shield bash. Just has a whole lot of damage behind him as well. Whereas Chalk, I feel like, really kind of needs to wait until level 5. That ultimate, the Storm Call, just so important to those ganks.
It feels like it might be a little while, though, before we see Sino get active. His blink's down for 80 seconds compared to Cuvo Fred, who has his up and available now. Pressure in the dual lane has swung over to the Oni Warriors. Maybe no surprise based off how the first, well, pre-30 seconds of the game had gone when Aurora lost the majority of his HP trying to go for a purple buff invade. Neil Ma will walk forward, group up the minions for Vote. It'll be Stewart and Aurora on the back foot. Kind of opposite of what we saw last game. It was a first blood in the duo that set up for the Tartarus Titans early game. Kind of a mediocre early mid transition for the team, and then it was really coming down to the late game for the Titans last time around.
Yeah, I mean, I'll chalk up the early laning phase of the duo to the Warriors in game 1 to just a knowledge check. Hey, how much have you played against Maui? Probably not a whole lot. Turns out I can actually pull you and stun you at level 1. Unlucky for you, you didn't see it coming. Neil Ma gets caught out. This time around, plays a little bit more cautiously around that damage output and is able to confirm his own purple buff without even having to use the hog on first rotation. So I'm thinking the Oni Warriors have essentially passed the knowledge check here in game 2. And it's going to come down to a lot more to the team fight, whereas the Tartarus Titans in game 1 had built themselves a little bit of, I suppose, headway going into the mid-game, which was a bit lackluster. This time around, I'm thinking mid-game probably goes a little bit better for you. Chalk slightly stronger than a Naja at like level 4 and 5, so Sino should be able to get involved a bit earlier on, won't be baited into going on a Neoma nearly as consistently as we had seen in the first 6 to 10 minutes of game 1. Otherwise, breaking down the Tartarus Titans composition, pretty difficult to do because I spent 35 minutes doing it in game 1. Let's look at the Oni Warriors. I'm really keeping my eyes on Cuvo. I think Neilma's got phenomenal rotation potential explicitly into Paul. Paul really will struggle against some of those rotations from Fafnir, the ability to close gap and really lock him down while simultaneously dealing immense damage. Could make that early portion of the game, which was already difficult for Paul in game 1, a little bit more difficult.
You see Cuvo and Dardes rotating through the jungle. Probably not going to find too much for early fight until it's the mid-camp pressure for the two of them. Level 5s nearly across the board. Now, as I say, that Aurora and Stewart do tick over. So I wonder where the first ultimates will start going through. Pull on towards Neil Ma. Now blink in from Cuvo to try and steal the blue. Does not do so. Instead, I want to go over to the Titans.
Wishful thinking from Cuvo there. Had he stolen the blue, would have set up for Nika very well, would have likely led to a situation where Nika could start proxying some of these waves and rotating towards mid a bit more consistently. But instead, just using the blink and coming up empty. I mean, of course, not great, but especially on Lancelot, who gets a lot of value from having that blink available. Just very similar to Tier in execution. Hey, I blink behind you and I push you into my team. Sorry, you're probably just dead. That play is going to be absent for the next 100 seconds.
Still pressure in the duo for Neil and Vote, though not immediately going for the Scepter. Instead, going over towards their purple buff while the Tartarus Titans clear out the wave. Cuvo Fred should now have access to his first fully upgraded item whenever he makes his way back towards base. For Sino, it's some cooldown reduction. Pick up the Jotun's Wrath. And once again, Paul recognizing that maybe he could be the eye target. Doesn't go for a stacking item compared to like Dardes has, who's gone for Book of Thoth. It's a Spear of Desolation this time for Paul. Maybe just due to the lack of healing on the composition this time around, wants to go for just a little bit of extra power in that build.
Yeah, I wonder though, but with the pacing in the game, I think Paul would have benefited a whole lot from Book of Thoth. That item is just one of the most ridiculous stat sticks in Smite. Penetration, power, mana, literally everything you want as a mage. Spear of Desolation, of course, no slacker, has a whole lot of power, should be getting a good deal more value from his first item than Dardes, at least for the next couple of minutes until the stacks start to ring true for him. Otherwise, maybe it's a byproduct of the Tartarus Titans playstyle that we had seen established in the previous match. It was a whole lot of, I want to kill your front line. So it was an early penetration stack from Paul. I believe Charon's coin in second slot. Doesn't seem to, or could still be the case, I mean, this time around. But the desk does a very good job of highlighting it. The ability to just go onto the enemy tank is going to be a lot more difficult to execute on for the Tartarus Titans. The ability for Sino to just set up for an Earthshaker, although still there to a certain extent, not nearly as easy to play around than a Windfire Wheels.
Yeah, you don't get that, 2.5 second window of, all right,
He's up in the sky. Get
Get
ready
in
to launch
position.
that ultimate. Here's where he's going to land. Remember, look at the ground. It's, hey, fire it. I'm going to hope that I can blink ult in time to help set up. Cubo Fred needs a little bit of poke from Sino. We can see some of the early damage that this Chalk can go through. But instead of cooldown for Cubo Fred, it's to the sky for Vote. He'll land down and damage from Stewart, but no further follow-up. Fields of Love were gone, and so is the Heart Bomb.
Yeah, I think Stu probably concerned about maybe Cubo's positioning there. Didn't have eyes, Tartarus Titans that is, on the jungle. If Stu had access to Dash, though, Dash and a Heart Bomb could have really made that fight a lot easier. Potential for first blood, but don't want to fumble in an important match like this. So Stu just takes the small win of poking out, forcing Vote to miss out, I believe, on like 1 minion's worth of the gold, and then rotating back. Both beads maintained, though, despite ultimates being dropped in the duo lane, means that ganks still going to be pretty difficult to come by. This has been a much slower paced game here, but we saw what that late game potential the Titans was in game 1, and well, they've got 4/5 of it here in game 2.
Aurora yanks Vote, or yanks the buff away from Vote, grabs Vote, who doesn't have beads, doesn't have ultimate. Blinko from Sino misses Vote, but the chase down onto the ROM is still good. He gets pulled back by Aurora, but Cubo Fred is here to save the day. Vote lives on. Cubo Fred hit by the Earthshaker, but out of danger. Even a teleport from Nika, and a full back now from the Oni Warriors as they're able to keep the Titans from getting that kill.
One unfortunate TP. The second that TP starts to get channeled, the Tartarus Titans say, oh, word? We're done. I'm sorry, it was a prank. We weren't serious. We're not diving. Nothing's going on. And Nika shows up in the duo. What's SOT up to during this entire time? Farming lane, grabbing totems, stealing jungle camps, and missing out on just about 0 experience. So even coming up empty, the Tartarus Titans find a little bit of value on that exchange, just stripping that relic and putting Nika a little bit further behind. Always going to be nice, and now 1 level disparity appears in that solo lane. I'm keeping my eyes on the Warriors, though. They're playing very reactively, whereas in the previous match, it was a bit proactive throughout the early. And slowly, the Tartarus Titans have, what was that, 2,000 gold in the lead? Just off map play. If this continues, the Oni Warriors, by the time a team fight actually starts to come their way, they'll be playing at a pretty significant disadvantage.
About a 1,700 gold. Close to that bouncing back and forth in XP for the Tartarus Titans. I was wondering for a moment where that Discordia passive was being allocated to. It is Nika over in the solo lane, but so far we haven't seen much use of it. I mean, typically whenever we see these Discordia combos, it's, okay, solo lane, make sure to get super far ahead. Here's your extra damage. Now we can just kill the enemy solo laner on cooldown because we just have more power innately, but we haven't really been able to see Nika get active so far in the early game. Wonder what will be maybe that turning point, at least for the Oni Warriors, or maybe that moment where they realize that, hey, we probably should start playing a little bit more proactively. Do you think it's around this first Pyromancer, around this first Gold Fury?
I think it's around whenever Nika makes a valuable rotation. That Anvil of Dawn so important to the fight for the Oni Warriors. As Stu dashes forward. Thought maybe we'd see Sino go for the dive there, maybe through the tower, or through the purple buff rather, but instead purple was there, so the Tartarus Titans just take that one for themselves. Posturing around the Gold Fury. Oni Warriors have got vision here. No way the Tartarus Titans can pull this one. Instead, reset it back to neutral, but another small win for the Tartarus Titans. It's looking like a death of 1,000 cuts right now for the Oni Warriors. They're going to have to dig in their heels somewhere.
Sunder from Aurora catches Neil, who jumps away, has the transform to not take the CC a little early from Sino on the ultimate. And that will allow Neil Ma to make his way out of the fight. Small misplay there from the jungler may have just cost the Titans a kill.
100%. No way Neil Ma survives that if the silence comes through. Because it's not just a silence, it's a massive bit of damage. It's a knockup, and Stu is in position to follow up with auto attack. So really unfortunate situation for the Tartarus Titans. Sino just not quite on the mark there. He's got the timing down. I don't imagine we see that twice this game, but real tough loss. The Titans would have been very easily able to transition that into a Gold Fury or even potentially push into that tower, considering they had the minion wave right behind them. Instead, the Oni Warriors, they're given a second lease on First Blood.
Do you see Neil Ma picks up a Phantom Shell very early on in the game? Gotta imagine the only reason for that is just because the ultimate from Aurora does leave a small bit of terrain behind that you can't walk through, but
Nika's own wall, I guess?
maybe if Nika accidentally walls his team
You're
off,
not trolling me this time, Nika.
It's questionable to say the least. I mean, when you think of Phantom Show, you're thinking Ymir's, Kabrakins, Yamojas. Maui's not necessarily the one that comes to mind.
I mean, it's similar in value. If you're picking up Phantom Shell against just Kabrakan, I think you'll probably get similar value from just Maui, right? It still locks down entire jungle corridors. It is seldom used for the wall, though. The wall almost feels like just a secondary effect on that ultimate. It's more so about the non-committal initiation of pulling someone in towards you. But, I mean, I've been killed by a Maui wall once or twice. Maybe the Oni Warriors want to make sure that doesn't happen. And regardless, Phantom Shell is still a shell.
Pyromancer will be the first neutral objective going down. That one to the Tartarus Titans. Have amassed themselves a little over a 2,000 gold lead now. Still no deaths just yet. Experience kind of closing the gap a little bit, at least for the Oni Warriors. That's one benefit to them, but how long will the Oni Warriors go before they're able to start really getting active across the board? It seems that the Tartarus Titans have controlled the entire pace of this game, Mifflin.
Yeah, so far the Titans have just gotten the better end of a lot of this macro experience, though. Leaning back to the Oni Warriors, I think, very important. Had that experience gap continue to grow, remember it was 2,000 gold and experience at one point, would have been very difficult to take any sort of engagement on map. Pyromancer off the map means the Tartarus Titans will have to actually fight if they want to go for any sort of neutral objective going forward. Gold Fury, the more likely of the two. But my concern is for the Oni Warriors, a lot of their team fight is all in. Nika dunks, or you have Cuvo Fred go in with his ultimate, or Neomot transforms in the backline of a team fight. Disruption for Sino could change things up.
Heal for Sino, but Cuvo Fred is there. Snipes are good, and so is the joust from Cuvo Fred. First blood, 13 and a half minutes in. This one goes to the Oni Warriors.
Yeah, Sino just out of position there, way too far up, playing as if he's just a standard tank Chalk, but he's Bruiser Chalk with Mace in first slot and Witchblade in second, then into Mace again. So not exactly tanky enough to be standing that far forward. Good rotation from Cuvo Fred, catches the escape path, vote, makes sure the damage output is there. But it was an expensive kill for the Oni Warriors. First blood 14 minutes in, but costing that many ultimates as well as the blink from Cuvo Fred means you can't really look at the Gold Fury immediately afterward. So the Tartarus Titans say, all right, Sino, let's rein that in a little bit. Let's play a little bit more safe, play around our initiation, and we'll be ready for the next team fight.
Rotation towards mids for the Oni Warriors. Titans will once again kind of get some established vision around that Gold Fury to maybe try and go for it again. Now that Sino has respawned in, can get his farm game back up, but he's falling behind just a little bit in the jungle. Paul's able to pick that up himself and get a little bit ahead in the mid. But has gone for double flat pen this time around. Divine Ruin was the item in first slot, game number 1. This time's gone for it in third behind the Charon's coin.
Yeah, just making sure that tanks aren't tanks. That seems to be Paul's MO here. Meatball off the mark would probably do upwards of 40% of Darda's HP at this portion of the game. Titans just playing slow. Feels like we're both teams spinning their wheels, waiting for actual critical mass, maybe 4th item, upgrade some of these relics, then start to look towards the team fight. But the Oni Warriors, who have been controlling oracles for the entirety of this game, are able to get that ward from the Tartarus Titans off the Gold Fury pit. Should be able to just shred the objective. It's not a standard crit build for Vote, instead more so interested in actually dealing with the enemy gods, Executioner in second slot as opposed to Shadow Steel or Wind Demon or anything that would just absolutely decimate an objective. But you still have got Fafnir, and Coerce is still an incredibly strong tool around these neutral objectives. Oni Warriors, given any small opportunity, might be able to take it off the map, but I think the Tartarus Titans might even still have the edge just because Stu has gone for a standard crit.
And I wonder where relics will go for the supports second time around. It's a Sunder and a Shell. We already know those ones fully upgraded. In the last game, I believe both of the supports did go for Bracer in second slot and fully upgraded those ones as soon as they could. So I wonder if that would be the call for the supports once again this time around. Relic Dagger actually picked up by Aurora very early on, so gotta imagine he wants to spam not just the Sunder, but whatever else comes up in that slot. Gold Fury started, but immediately pulled away. Maybe it's a pick onto Aurora instead, but
Good luck.
not a whole lot of damage. Some decent poke, at least onto the Maui for now. Will push Aurora back.
Yeah, Roar might just head all the way back to base. Sees Nika, forced to defensively leap here. And now considering that all of the Oni Warriors on this side of the map, the Tartarus Titans have rotated in kind. Just make sure that Fury doesn't fall down. posturing seems to have ended, though. The Tartarus Titans can reset themselves ever so slightly back to neutral. Oni Warriors still not confident enough to pull out that objective. Bracer Brilliance in second slot for Aurora, so a little bit of movement speed for the team on a god that's essentially got Heavenly Sprint hard baked into the kit thanks to that third ability. You've got a whole lot of utility available to the Tartarus Titans going forward.
SOT takes a bit of poke from Neil and Cuvo as they clear out that mid-Harpy camp for themselves. And the Oni Warriors have closed up most of the lead that the Titans established. It was 2,000 earlier, now pushing closer to only about 800 that the Warriors are behind at this stage. Careful there, Mifflin.
Yeah, almost fell down.
Yeah, oh, good there, man. Anyway, Oni Warriors, though, we'll see if they can do anything with this lead. They've been able to pull back towards themselves a little bit, forcing Aurora to ult or dash away defensively yet again. Smaui's not getting the same impact that we saw in game number 1, though most of his value that we were seeing from Aurora was coming in those late game team fights.
J-Mac, at what point do you think it's fair for me to say that Chalk Jungle is costing the Tartarus Titans, right? Because it just feels like we haven't seen anything from the Chalk yet. I mean,
Well, he's the only death, so I'd say right there it's already cost him.
yeah, it costs a little bit, but like, even then, I believe he was first death in the previous match as well, or at least was the majority of the deaths in the early for the Tartarus Titans, but haven't seen the initiation, haven't really seen a whole lot of team fight spread either. The DPS, not exactly impressive. This Chalk hasn't been able to accomplish much, and as the game ticks onward and onward, and we get closer and closer to that late game, he's going to have to show something.
Weird Fire Giant pull by the Titans. Sino and SOT recognizing the two of them don't have the damage output to deal with it, so they back away right away. But I mean, you're right to say, I mean, we look over at player damage, and it's a clear halfway line with a Fafnir above the over half of the cast. In this regard, strange to see just how low some of these players are in this regard. I mean, both the junglers low on the charts there. Sure, Cubo's got the first blood, but it doesn't feel like either jungler's really gotten anything going for these squads.
I mean, the mid 3v3 just has not been up to a whole lot, right, on either of these teams. Dardez has been looking for poke, hasn't quite found it. Paul has been sitting on his own tower line, maybe some PTSD from the previous game, doesn't want to get Thor dunked on cooldown, so instead playing a bit defensively. Just a quiet match here in game 2. But games like this tend to explode in pace, generally around that 20-22 minute mark. Once you can start threatening Fire Giant, that first team fight just builds more and more weight. And it feels like the Tartarus Titans have still got the potential to just completely dominate a team fight. This is what Paul's Vulcan brings. I don't know. I mean, that pick just so closely associated with this player that one Earthshaker connecting with some priority targets could just absolutely separate some of these engagements. Whereas Golden Apple, I feel like there's a little bit more counterplay, disjointed DPS, has to hit the first tick and then the secondary explosion to get the full value of that ultimate. Means that Aegis is a little bit easier to channel in some of those situations. I don't know. But either of these teams, obviously very capable of just absolutely dominating at any given second. But as of now, I might be giving slight edge to the Oni Warriors because I know what Lancelot's going to do in the late game, and it's a whole lot of damage, whereas Sino on this Chalk, you won't catch me doing it often, but I might be questioning Sino here a little bit.
It always kind of rounds back to this conversation of, you know, we've talked with SPL teams about directly with SEC squads when they try and do these no battle early games, these we're just going to sit here and try and farm up and hope for a team fight. You know, you lose a 3v3 or a 4v4 in the first 10 or so minutes of the game. What do you lose? Maybe what, a Scorpion, maybe a Pyro if it's up. You lose a 4v4 this stage of the game, you might be losing a Fire Giant. You might be losing a little bit more than that. Feels like this is a very costly time bomb that both these teams are weighing on Mifflin.
Yeah, so both sides showing a vote of confidence towards their composition in the team fight proper. It's just when that team fight is going to happen tends to be the question. Relic Roundup, we got a couple upgraded on both sides. Heroic Teleport for SOT mirrored by Nika, so both have the ability to rotate in towards any of these fights. But Nika's going to do it the old-fashioned way, up to the air. And Tartarus Titans say, all right, land first, then we'll go in.
Lands on SOT. Has the hammer to get out
Good
if he
damage.
needs to, but Cubo Fred's putting out a lot of DPS to the back line. Aurora will be able to swing away, transform out of Neil, and now it's the Oni Warriors onto the Gold Fury, and it's up to the Titans to now respond back. But Paul's got ultimate. Aurora does as well. He's able to yank Neil Maw back. Neil jumps in place but gets caught out, and SOT takes the golden apple away. Paul finds the first kill of the fight. The second one goes to Stewart, and maybe the third as Tartarus is stuck in the fields of love. A double kill for the mid laner of the Tartarus Titans, and maybe a bit more, if not, for the wall from Nika to hold the Titans back.
Yeah, Paul allowed to free cast. SOT zones 3. Sino says, hold up, buddy, you're not alone. Runs through the entirety of the team fight to rejoin his soul laner in the back line. Throws up the 3-man silence and takes the first team fight of the game in one fell swoop. Tartarus Titans pull the Fire Giant. Cubo Fred, Nika nearby.
Aurora has to swing away. Fire Giant is low. It could be taken by anyone. And it's the Tartarus Titans now. Can Nika get out of the fight? Hammer is there, up to the sky, just in the nick of time to get out of there. But it's Fire Giant around all 5 of the Titans.
Man, and the Titans just bide their time for this exact moment for so long, and it pays off in dividends. The entirety of the gold lead that we've been hypothesizing would happen, that the Tartarus Titans would be able to push for themselves, it's here now. We've got it. Fire Giant on all 5, and plenty of towers and Gold Fury still up to collect resources from. The Oni Warriors, though, have got one silver lining, and it's that in Game 2, their base defense is much stronger. You've got a standard mage. Dardes should be able to just keep these waves at bay or poke pretty consistently with a Strife. Discordia much better in this situation than a Morrigan is. The concern being, though, is that the Tartarus Titans Siege may actually be better than it was previously. Pick potential, set up for Earthshaker, a little bit worse. Naja, of course, single target in CC, but removing that single target from the map like a scalpel is pretty good. But walking into simplified engagements around towers, around Phoenixes, where you're generally just in a very small, maybe 55 to 70 unit square, means that, you know, Stormcall is probably going to hit a couple of people, or the giant slow that you can throw out is probably going to control a lot of space. So Siege a bit better for the Tartarus Titans in Game 2, but the Oni Warriors defense much better. We'll see if it outweighs the increased strengths of the Titans.
This will be the first tower of the game for the Warriors to go down. Titans lost out on their tier 1 in solo earlier on. Maybe first tier 2 as well. The Titans, aside from SOT, group up left. SOT deals with the mid tier 1 all by himself. Triple stun from Heart Bomb. Unfortunately, we don't get any more follow-up there. Cubo Fred
the wall!
blocked off by the wall from Nika. And that will be the death of him. SOT to the back finds 2 with Eagles Rally. Vote able to roll away. Neil Maw, though, put in the dirt by Paul. Killing spree and a yank back on towards Nika. The Thor is gone. It's another double for Paul.
So we were wondering why Phantom Shell was purchased. Yeah, Cubo Fred wishes Neil Maw was there, man. That is such a tough situation. Peel attempt from Nika, of course, valiant, but maybe does a little bit more harm than good. And now the Tartarus Titans should be able to crack the base and have 20 seconds to play with on the respawn.
5 versus 2. No ult for Dardes, ult up for Vote. SOT the first one in to tank up the Titan. It's not taking a lot of damage, but Vote is. He rolls the wrong way. Aegis will not save his life. Vote is gone. Dardes has his ultimate back up in a little while, but that's quite a ways away. The Titan at a quarter HP. Neil Maw doing the best that he can, but it's just not enough. The Titans with their new jungler take the first set of the playoffs.
I guess Chungle worked, man. I guess it just did. I mean, like 2 ultimates, it could have been anyone else. The Tartarus Titans, though, I think the takeaway here is that they're still playing at the highest level. They're still capable of performing, even given less than 3 days heads up, less than 3 days practice time with their new jungler on a completely different style. The Tartarus Titans last week weren't playing around Chucks. They weren't playing around Najas. They were playing around Guan Yus and Fenrir's almost exclusively. So adaptation's certainly there, and the Tartarus Titans looking better for it.
I mean, I think it comes down to a lot of what Slaney was saying in the pregame interview was, you know, we didn't get a lot of time. We only tried out one person, and that was Sino, and he seemed to work pretty well for the team. Now we get to see that execution on field where, yeah, even though Sino is not playing what Layers was playing, it seems to still work out for at least what the rest of the team is going to do here. Game number 2 goes to the Titans. They take the first set of the playoffs. They'll throw it over to the desk to break it down.
Yeah, 2-0, Trelly, to start off the weekend. And it's from the team that had the roster change literally like less than 24 hours ago when they finally solidified that. The Titans look really good in this one. Less kills than in game number 1, right? It's much slower pace early on. I think at one point, you know, we were even talking about it where we were talking about all the chalk jungle we've seen this year. Mifflin was talking about it a little in the cast.
Yeah.
Sometimes results are all that matters, and you know what? They get the win with it. They get the kills that are necessary. I mean, really, it is very slow pace until one big fight that just leads to a fire channel, leads to so much open on the map.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the jungle was just to go in there to put pressure off the carries. Paul 4-0, Stewart 3-0, right? Those were the kills. As long as your carries are not being looked at, you're doing your job. Game number 1, Sino was a great facilitator for the team. Game number 2, I mean, Sino ate a ban, so then Paul gets Vulcan again. You know, I'll take that. You know, you get to take away Set, Hell, and then the Naja, and they couldn't take away too much. And once the late game team fights started coming through, it seemed like the Titans had that overwhelming confidence. They dropped the kill, but after that, they had the team fight.
And it was fun to watch. I mean, again, the way they tackled that one, we were admittedly maybe not trusting as much in them going into game number 2, given the way that some of the team fights looked like they should roll out with the compositions. And if you're looking over towards the Titans, now you're one set away from potentially finding yourselves at the World Championship, despite a change kind of coming at your doorstep literally the day before. So what to expect from this team? I'm expecting good things now as we move forward, but you don't got to take it from me. You have a Roar standing by for an interview.
Yeah, that's right. The support for the Tartarus Titans, Aurora, joins me for the post-game interview. First off, congrats on your win. I mean, getting a 2-0 with a roster change immediately, not unheard of, but definitely something that sometimes takes a little time to get there. Kind of walk me through maybe the picks and bans of game number 2. We get to the end, we see Chalk is the choice out there. Was that kind of Sino just saying, yeah, give it to me, I love playing that? Y'all put a lot of faith and a lot of trust in that pick?
Yeah, I just told Sino, like, just play what you want, because we literally played, so the timetable basically Tuesday, we got the news, and then we played with Oath to try him out, and then we played Wednesday with Sino, and he did really well, and Oath did really well too. They both did good, but we chose to go with Sino, and then we only got I think 4 or 5 games with him, and just going into it, I just told him to play whatever he feels comfortable on, and I mean, I've won with him before, so I can trust him for sure, and he's a really good player, so.
Yeah, for sure. Able to find a 2-0 against the Oni Warriors. Not an easy feat, especially with how well that they've been looking through there. Now, talk to me a little bit about the Maui, because it's something that kind of got a 10th pick in game number 1. You top 3'd in the second game. Something that was kind of alluded to is it maybe feels like a Umoja Light in the sense of maybe at the casual level, not so great, but for the pros to expect a little bit more. You kind of echo those same sentiments.
Yeah, he's fun. Shout outs to Moswell for playing Arena with me. We played so many. I think I went 29-1 with Moswell in Arena on Maui. When he first came out, we were just slamming it, so it was fun. But yeah, shout outs to Moswell. Yeah, I think he's good. He's fun, so I enjoy playing him.
All right, well, you gave me a fun reminder to never queue into an arena game against you, especially if you're playing Maui. Aurora, congrats on your win. I'll get you back with the team, and we'll throw it back over to the desk.
Cool. Thank you.
Get a lot of practice and get it whatever way you can, right? If he's slamming the Maui, it looked really good because of it.
He's just having fun.
He's just having fun.
They're just gaming, man.
And we got to see, and it was, I mean, we were having that conversation. We were talking to Hindu about it in the back, where we were just like, if you were playing this in a maybe non-synchronized, non-team fight setting, you never know. It could go a little bit of both. Can't do everything on your own, right? But you get a little bit of help around you, or a nice organized squad that is a full-on SPL team. Suddenly, the Maui brings in a lot for them. Charlie, I will admit my brain keeps resetting to the chalk, but luckily it was the setup again. Lots of damage from Paul. I mean, a lot of things that just go right for the Titans. And admittedly, again, because of the kill count in the game, it was really only 2 fights they had to win.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When we saw this tier 2 up, I'm like, wait a second, are they going to be able to end here? And it wasn't just off this play. It did take a little bit of dancing around the Titan, but they just needed that one fight. I mean, they only dropped 1 kill before that Gold Fury pull, so it seemed like the Tartarus Titans were just biding their time until they had the items to back up the actual fight that they wanted to go for there. It was all out dive and protect the carries, and turns out if your carries aren't dying, your team fight is probably looking pretty solid.
They're not dying, and I imagine, especially when we get to the next page, if they're doing the amount of damage I anticipate from Paul and Stewart, again, probably not going to be a whole ton, but compared to literally everybody else in the game, it is going to be Well, I would presume a pretty healthy amount. 4-0 for Paul, 3-0, 4
Wait,
as well. there
imagine
for
dying.
Stuart.
Sino was 0-1.
Yeah, and you know what? That's the reason. That's your power. Hang on to that one. That's how you can talk about the jungle. And yeah, you can see it actually pretty in line with a lot of the other damage numbers that we get to see across the board here. Maybe a little low overall for Cuvo, but that's about it. We saw some moments that were just great for the Titans, and in that last game, it was actually quite literally just a few moments that were great for the Titans because that's all they really gave for us. But they get to move forward in the bracket. Now, that is important for them. Again, if you're looking at today, if you're looking at this weekend, that means that they get to move forward, have one more set potentially to win, and all of a sudden they're in. They still have 2 losses, again, since it's double elim, so they've got a little wiggle room to kind of work with. Meanwhile, if you're the Warriors, you're already feeling a little bit of the pressure, right? We won't see them again, I believe, until Saturday.
Right.
That'll be their last chance kind of opportunity to try and qualify in. We'll get to see if they can do it then. But, of course, looking for the Titans, it's all about the next matchup now and where they're going to go, because the Warriors are going to have to wait till tomorrow to figure out who exactly they are going to be going up against. The Titans find themselves against the Leviathans. Maybe not the best place that you would find yourselves, but still a very fun match. I, again, anticipate for us to be able to watch Leviathans on the hot streak as of late. Shelly, I don't know. The Titans played pretty cleanly there. I think it's going to give us a nice competition tomorrow.
Yeah, certainly so. I think the Tartarus Titans probably feeling confident after coming off a win like that. You know, they get more practice time at the very least, and they get to sit back and watch and see what the other teams are doing. But as you said, the Leviathans, it stinks when your prize is getting to face the Leviathans, right? But someone's got to take them down, and, you know, if you're this confident, then you should be just fine.
I consider their prize that we've got a little more wiggle room to work with in the bracket than maybe just going against the Leviathans. Well, I guess we'll see. Maybe they win. I mean, Slaney sounded really confident in the pregame interview. I think Aurora sounded confident, and I think for good reason with that 2-0. Feels really solid. Warriors, as you saw, not out just yet. A lot of work to do to be able to get themselves a qualifier. We've got 16s. Only 4 of them are going to make it in. And, well, we're one step closer. We won't be finding out who the first one is until tomorrow, but we might be finding out who else is one step closer as we close out